welcome to my YouTube channel. I'm Michael, and this video is about how I organized my tools and the Fusion tool library and the Pathpilot tool library to fit my needs. I'm not getting into the details about Fusion's tool library and how to design your own tool holders and all these things. There are excellent videos out there on YouTube. This is more about how I organized it for my needs. When I got my Tormach about 6 months ago, I was struggling a little bit about the optimal way to organize my tools and how to keep Pathpilot and Fusion organized and synchronized. Anyhow, so we start with the hardware side of my tool organization, the tool rack I built, and then we get into the organization of my tool library and how I synchronize it with Pathpilot. In order to maximize or optimize available space in my workshop, and also to keep the tools close so I can reach them while standing in front of the machine for tool change, I designed and built this tool rack with 30 fixed positions for tool holders, numbered 1 to 30, in 6 different sections with 5 tools each. First section from number 1 to 5 holds all my aluminum cutters, an 1/8, quarter, 3/8, half-inch end mill, and the 1/4 inch ball nose. Number 6 to 10 are exactly the same tools for steel. From number 11 till 15 I have roughers, mostly used for steel. Down here are shear hawk, fly cutter, or superfly how it's called at Tormach, a face mill and 2 thread mills. Over here are all my chamfer and spot drills. Down here I have pretty much everything I need for engraving. That's the odd one out here. That's a 3/4 inch end mill with a collar for the TTS spindle. And then we have 4 unnumbered tool holders here, or tool rack holders. These are for chucks and for an ER20. And back here is a tension compression holder. Down here and mounted to the stand are 6 additional positions. These are project-specific tool numbers. For example, might be a drill number 113, which is used for that project. And example, you just pop in the chuck with the drill here. You build these numbers. I have a little set here with numbers, and you build these numbers, put them together, and then you pop them in here. I 3D printed these little holders. And if you don't want to do that, it's also an easy solution to do it differently. Just take a piece of tape, put that here, and then you write down whatever tool number you need. Also, which comes in handy with this little rack here, it serves as a fixed point for my camera mount when I'm filming here. Just pop that in here, and then I don't need a tripod or anything. And finally, to the right side of the headstock is the last portion of my tool rack system. It's a 3D printed holder for the Tormach Passive probe, tool number 99, as assigned by Pathpilot. This location and setup allows me to use the probe without the need to disconnect it and connect it every time. Makes the use of this probe a little bit more convenient. I just take it out, pop it in the spindle, and when I'm done I put it back in here. And there's a little notch here that prevents it from sliding out. That pretty much covers the hardware side of my tool organization. Regarding the software side, I very rarely enter tools, actually never enter tools in Pathpilot. I do everything on the Fusion side and then export the file and import it on Pathpilot. The reason being, I want to make sure that the tool I'm using in Fusion for my manufacturing or CAM process is the same I'm later using to cut this part. If you're using tool number 13, which is an end mill in Fusion, and in Pathpilot, tool number 13 is the fly cutter, the experience might be rather unpleasant. So I want to make 100% sure if I enter a tool here in Pathpilot and I get distracted and forget about it, then I run into problems. So in order to avoid that, I only change tools in Fusion and export them to Pathpilot to make sure both tool libraries are synchronized. You have one problem if you're doing that. If you import a tool library to Pathpilot, Pathpilot will not merge both tool libraries, but it will override whatever you had in there. That means all your offsets are gone. And now you can start measuring all the tool offsets again. In order to avoid that and make it easier, I built a little software tool which reads the offsets from Pathpilot into my Fusion tool library, and then the combination of my Fusion tool library, including the Pathpilot offsets, are exported and then imported to Pathpilot. So I don't have additional work with remeasuring tool offsets. Comes in very handy. I'll show you that later on my computer. I think that's pretty much covering it here on the workshop side. Let's get to my computer and I'll show you the organization of my tools in Fusion. This is the tool library screen in Fusion, which you find under the manufacturing or CAM environment. I used to organize my tools in subcategories, for example, drills, taps, woodworking tools, and so forth, which led to one problem. Since I tried to keep my Fusion tool library and my Pathpilot tool library always synchronized, I had to export each of those subcategories separately, then combine all these exports in one CSV file before I uploaded it to Pathpilot. I don't do that anymore. I combined all tools in one tool library, saved it on the cloud because I've another laptop in my workshop and it's accessible from all my machines. And all my tools are saved in here. And one note to all this information here. If you click on any tool and you enter a tool, you enter cutter, dimensions, what kind of holder. You have the cutting data, that means it's speeds and feeds and so on. All this information, when you run G-code on your Tormach, is irrelevant. With one exception, if you hand over control to Pathpilot for cutter compensation, meaning that you hand for one particular operation control of the final tool path from Fusion over to Pathpilot, then a subset of this entered information becomes relevant, and that is diameter or the wear values. You can enter then on the machine while milling different values here, and that changes your tool path. If you don't do that, all this information you entered is irrelevant to Pathpilot. Pathpilot only takes the tool number and assumes that you have the right tool number, right meaning the one you use in Fusion CAM for this particular operation. There's one exception. When you run your Tormach manually, what Tormach calls conversational mode, then some of this information becomes relevant. For example, the description or the name of your tool. What Pathpilot does in conversational mode, it takes information embedded in this description to determine the best speeds and feeds for your tool. And that's how it looks like. If you enter a tool and you account for certain attributes like type, coding in a certain nomenclature, then Pathpilot will take this information to determine speeds and feeds. The attributes are listed down here. When you hover over one tool, then it says, okay, it's recognizing in this example diameter and that it's a 3-flute end mill. It has a corner radius, it's a carbon tool, and it has a specific coding. If you enter there a name like my first end mill, then Pathpilot does not have a lot to work with. So what I did, I named all my tools according to Tormach's nomenclature. I used as much information as I have for this tool to hand it over to my Tormach or to Pathpilot when I use it in conversational mode. If I run G-code, like I said, all this is irrelevant. One more thing I want to point out is that Fusion offers the option to enter more than one material for the cutting data of one tool. That's meaning that you don't have to create tool number 17 of a certain cutter if you cut aluminum and 18 if you cut steel. You can keep tool number 17 and you have a subcategory to define what kind of material you're processing with this tool for a particular project. For example, let's go to a drill. Under cutting data, you see all kinds of material listed here. And if I create a Fusion CAM operation, I just click on the material and I have all my speeds and feeds for this material there. And everything is saved under the same tool number. It's a very good feature, but it also means when you export the tool library to a CSV file, tool number 17 will show up 18 times, or in this case, tool number 110 will show up 8 times. Just keep that in mind when I get to the portion where I discuss exporting files to Pathpilot, how we deal with that. Okay, the next thing I want to show you is how I organize the kind of tools in my tool library. There are a million different ways to do that. You can do that by tool size or by the material you're cutting or by alphabetically. I used a structure which serves me quite well. I'll show you that in an Excel sheet. I have 30 fixed and numbered positions in my tool rack, and the tool rack has 6 shelves with 5 tools each. So the first 5 tools, or the first rack, are most commonly used aluminum cutting end mills and a ball end mill. Then the next rack holds the same tool geometry but for steel. Then we have roughing end mills. The tool number 16 to 20 is a Shearhoff fly cutter face mill and 2 thread mills. Then 21 to 25 are all the chamfering and spot drill tools. 26 to 30 are all the engraving tools with one odd one out. A large end mill, I didn't find a different spot for that. These are just very small tools from 40. Then from 50 on, I have slot saws. Is another special kind of very small end mills. And then tool number 98 I use for my Heimer, and 99 is the tool position fixed for the Tormach Pathpilot probe, so you cannot assign it to anything else. Then I start with metric drills at the tool number 101. At 151 I start with inch drills, and at 200 I start with metric tabs, and at 250 I start with inch tabs. The way I organize those is, for many drills I have the right tab. For example, if I want to cut a 6 millimeter tab, I use a 5 millimeter drill. That's indicated here, 5 millimeter drill for an M6 by 1. The tab for this drill is then tool number 213. I just add 100 to each drill I use for a tab, and I get the tab. So if I go here to number 213, I have the tab for this drill. So that's an M6 tab, and the drill, I just subtract 100, I have the right drill. It makes it a little bit easier because all these drills and tabs are project specific. They don't have a fixed place in my tool rack next to each other. So if I put a drill in the chuck to cut the hole for a tab later, I know I add 100 and have the right tab. That's the way I organize it, works quite well. And then below that I have just other mills for woodworking, I don't use that often. Most important for me is tool number 1 to 30, and I must say that 99% of all the work I do, I use these 30 positions, and then including, of course, 98 and 99 for my probes. Okay, let's get to the export-import process and the little Excel tool I developed for that. You just right-click on your tool library, say Export Library, and that will create a CSV file, which then is imported into my Excel tool. It's pretty simple. Here's a quick explanation. You just copy all the data from this export CSV file. You click here, paste everything. The next step is you sort this whole list then according to the tool number. And finally, you remove duplicates by the Excel function remove duplicates. And you do that by highlighting everything, and then you remove duplicate according to this, I call it control string. It's just the tool number and the description of the tool. So if Excel finds this control string more than once, it will reduce it. The reason for that, as I mentioned earlier, if you have several materials specified for one tool, for example, a cutter, and you specified speeds and feet for aluminum and steel and whatever, this tool number will show up several times. To eliminate that, to have each tool number only once, I remove the duplicates. This process then leads to this tool list, where I only have the tool number, the tool description, and the diameter in inches. As I mentioned earlier, if a tool is specified with the dimension millimeters, I recalculate the millimeters into inches here. For example, a 1 millimeter drill is 0.039 inches to have one consistent diameter dimension. And then the next step is I import the tool library from Pathpilot. So I export the Pathpilot tool library and import it in my Excel sheet. The reason, as I mentioned before, is I want to keep all the tool offsets I entered in Pathpilot and include it in my own tool library, so that when I re-import it to Pathpilot, I don't lose those. Pathpilot does not merge tool libraries. If you import something to Pathpilot, it will overwrite everything you have in there, and then you're ending up entering a lot of tool offsets. So I want to preserve those tool offsets. For that reason, I import the file from Pathpilot, and then in this tab here, I have here the imported from Pathpilot, and then I have here my tool list. Now what I do here is I compare the Pathpilot tool list with the tool library from Fusion and create a sanity check. Is tool number 1 in Pathpilot the same as in Fusion? And if it's okay, mark it here with a green OK. And the diameter of the tool, is it also the same, just to make sure that I have the same tool on both sides. And then I enter the Z offset here, and when that's done, I just copy this list to a tab export to PP. The reason being, if you save an Excel file as CSV, it can only export one tab here. So that's details about Excel. And that file now I send to Pathpilot, and it is my tool library, including the Z offsets from Pathpilot. So I don't lose anything. And also I export the tool library up to tool number 1000. That means I have empty spaces here sometimes, because I have a tendency to organize my tools starting with full numbers, like 40 is one category, 50 is another one, and so on. My drills, as I mentioned before, they all start with 101, and metric drills at 151, and then associated tabs with the same tool number plus 100. So I export this tool library up to tool number 1000 to Pathpilot. And now I have a fully synchronized tool library in Fusion and in Pathpilot. And with this little sanity check here, I make sure that one tool library fits the other one. All this sounds much more complex and complicated than it actually is. The only thing I need to do is I import my tool library from Fusion and I import my tool library from Pathpilot. The rest is done pretty much automatically. All these columns and cells have formulas behind it where they compare. Here, for example, the tool offsets. Are they associated with the same tool as in my Fusion library? The sanity check here is done fully automatic. If something is not in alignment, it would show up in red as not okay, and then I can address that. So pretty much you export Fusion, you export Pathpilot, you enter both files in this tool. The rest is done automatically. The end result is an export file to Pathpilot, which has your updated tool library, including the Z offsets, which were previously already in Pathpilot. Could make that probably even easier with the copy-paste issue that I just write a little macro. Eventually I might do that, but at this point I'm happy with it. All right, that's the end of this video. I hope you enjoyed it and it was a little bit helpful. And I'm very much looking forward to see you soon.